and welcome to episode 61 and the final episode of the year 2024 of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, coming at you as always from a frigid and cold Beijing. I'd like to thank all listeners and supporters of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, as well as Mushin martial culture in general, for your support and patronage throughout the year. I hope both the podcast interviews as well as all our other endeavors throughout the year have entertained you and kept you happy. It is my utmost desire to spread the joy of the practice of these arts, the joy that I have enjoyed up until now throughout my life, with anybody who's interested and newcomers to the arts as well. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your support. Those of you that listen to the podcast, those of you that watch my videos, those of you that share our work, etc., those of you that support us in the ways that you do, whether that be through Patreon support or through purchasing items from our online store, etc. I wouldn't be able to do all of this without you guys. So thank you, and I wish you all a happy new year and all the best over the festive season. All right, let's get into some Mushin martial culture news. Since the last episode of the Drunken Boxing Podcast, I've released quite a few items on our YouTube channel. Firstly, I made a short video about a project I had worked on for quite some time. When I was researching the hidden history of Shuaijiao series and producing it, I came across a woodblock printing that was actually created and published during the time of the Shanpu Ying's existence, towards the end of the Qing dynasty. When I found this image, it was not easy to find a good quality scan of it. It's actually housed and hosted by a prominent university, which is where I got the scan from. I then restored it. It was from a publication at the time which featured the image of the Shanpu Ying training over 2 pages, which I then restored. I put it into one image, so I put the image back together, then I hand colored it. Much like I did with the Guoyun Shen Chui Zhai Xingyi Gathering image, which is the cover of my book, I did a similar thing with a woodblock printing of the Shanpu Ying. Now, this is a print of them in training, in competition, basically, having matches. And it was done during the Qing dynasty, so the person who did the illustration was first-hand viewing the Shanpu Ying. And it's actually a very interesting image because it teaches us quite a lot about Shuaijiao, about how they trained, how they looked, the air or the environment in which they were training in, the tools and utensils, apparatus, and clothing that they traditionally wore, much of which changed following the collapse of the Qing, the disbanding of the Shanpu Ying, and finally the emergence of Shuaijiao out of the imperial realm and into the public sphere, which only happened following the collapse of the Qing dynasty. In fact, the branding and the naming also only occurred at that point. Nonetheless, it's a short video that gives you some insight into that poster. The poster is available from our store, but go check the video out if you want to learn more. I also released the next episode, episode 3 of The Secrets of Xingyi Quan. This is that series, docu-series that I've been releasing, produced in Shanxi on the history of Xingyi Quan. An interesting series to say the least. Lots of information in there I'm sure the public or the general international audience was not aware of. There are some aspects, as I mentioned in the beginning of the series, that this is produced from a Shanxi perspective. There's some information in there that needs addressing. And at a later stage, I plan with some other guests, prominent, respected, and people who have good knowledge on the history and the practice of Xingyi Quan. We'll have some discussion about some of the aspects that are raised throughout the series to bring further lights and to bring different perspectives on what was presented. Nonetheless, much of the content in there is spot on and worth the watching. In fact, even the information that I find slightly off is worth hearing, because what you're hearing is a perspective from a specific group of people, and it's in some cases it tells you a lot about their motives and their mentality as well. So you can learn a lot about the wonderful martial forest that we're all part of and the different trees that grow in it. All right, I also released a brief glimpse of Taixing, one of the 12 animals in the Xingyi Quan system. A brief glimpse from some of the lessons that I've released on the Huajin online program. The Taixing is the Tai bird shape, one of the birds within the 12 animals, and I show a brief glimpse of the practice and some other aspects that are drawn directly from lessons that are in the Huajin program. And in line with that, I also released a full lesson, which is a discussion lesson from the Huajin program. Discussion lessons are released once a month as well, sometimes more. And this one is my own Shifu, Di Guoyong. When he was visiting Beijing a couple of months ago, I had filmed a bunch of videos with him, asking him different questions so he could share his knowledge with the learners on the program. And I just made one of those public, and it's regarding Tang Ni Bu, or the mud wading step, within Baguazhang in general, but within Liang style in particular. There's quite some interesting insight there, coming directly from an older generation, my teacher himself, on the subject. Additionally, I released another Senki episode. I haven't released Senki episodes for a long time. I filmed this during the summer when Marin Spivak, who happens to be the first guest we ever had on the Drunken Boxing podcast, he was visiting Beijing, visiting his teacher Chen Yuhe, and we decided to film a little video together, particularly about Chen style, about some perspectives, about his practice and understanding, and I think it's a very insightful discussion on a particular subject, namely push hands and contrasts between the Chen Zhaokui, Chen Fa Ke approach and what has emerged in more recent years, the sportive, competitive Tuishou division, particularly out of the Chen village. So go check that out. And then finally, a few days ago, I released a video that I've been working on for quite a while. I have been trying to learn some new things, and I had this idea to make a parody kind of comedy video, but at the same time advertising a real product that I use and I offer on my website, a very useful product, a very traditional product. And with that is an iron body conditioning steel brush that is used for conditioning in Chinese martial arts. It's also used in other Asian martial arts, but it's predominantly drawn from Chinese methods. I decided to make a parody video in which, well, check it out. It's called Captain Fa Jin's Iron Body Kung Fu Conditioning Brush. Took quite a bit of time to learn the skills to make this video, but I'm sure people, particularly people of an older generation, my generation, and that would find it quite amusing. So check that out. All right, let's get into today's podcast. My guest today is a very dear and very old friend, Mr. Peter Warr, Master Peter Warr. Peter Warr actually started training quite early. For most of us, he's been training longer than definitely we've been alive. And for some of the listeners, longer than their parents may have been alive. He started training in the early 60s. And at that time, he hails from London. And at that time, what was available to be drawn into Chinese martial arts, I mean, he was quite a pioneer. And he was a pioneer in other aspects too. He's a dear old friend of mine. He practiced firstly in England before training with prominent teachers in China and Singapore. He started early off with quite a prominent teacher back in those days in England named Tzu Chi. We get into the history of that as well, who in fact was his father-in-law. And from there, he started meeting other prominent teachers, finally leading his way into the British Council for Chinese Martial Arts in the early 80s. He's served in various executive roles there, finally becoming a president, vice chairman, honorary president, etc. But in 1987, he started training with a master who lived in Singapore at the time, Chen Yuhe, who actually hailed from the Nanjing Academy. At that same time, Peter started his studies in China. He over the course of his career, he has studied with many prominent, well-known teachers, particularly in the internal arts. He focuses predominantly on Tai Chi Chuan. He studied with Li Deyin. He studied with Sun Jianyun. He studied with the Yang family. He's even spent time with Chen stylist lineage holders, etc. So he's really gotten to the root at a very, very early time. He's a pioneer, as I mentioned. But more importantly, in 1988, he actually attended the International Judges Course that was actually at that time organized by the Chinese Wushu Association for what was becoming the International Wushu Federation, and he became the first European to ever become an IWF judge. Now, that is quite a feat in its own. But what's more important is, in fact, that he got involved before the International Wushu Federation even existed. So he was involved in that capacity, and he was a member of the International Wushu Federation's technical committee up until 2019. So from before the establishment formally of the organization until 2019, he's been involved in that capacity. And that's how I knew him. I met him as I was also within the technical committee, and I've always gotten along very, very well with him. He was one of the few people with integrity, which we kind of talk about in the podcast. When things would go wrong, he was one of the few people in the organization that would stand up with integrity, risking it all, but standing up for what's right and the morals and values that he holds dear. So he's made massive contributions throughout his life. But, I'm rambling on here. Let's get into the podcast so you can hear about his life story. It was very interesting. There's information in this that I wasn't even aware of, and I've known Mr. Warr for many, many years. I mean, we're talking about well over a decade, probably even more than that, maybe even closer to 2. So this is a very interesting discussion, and with that, I give you Peter Warr. I'm very happy today to be talking to my good friend, an old friend of mine, Mr. Peter Warr. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. We've known each other for quite a few years. We've worked together. We've commiserated together. We've had good times together. We've gone through hell together. But you're one of the old hats in particularly in the International Federation, but as a Chinese martial arts practitioner as well. I think your history goes back quite a few decades, both internationally and within England and the UK itself, right?
Yeah. I mean, I started training in 1965.
Oh, wow. And that was in England, right?
In England, yeah. With to become my he eventually become my father-in-law, but it was from Clifford Chisu.
Right. Yeah, it's a name I've heard a couple of times, and I know back in those days he was fairly well known. But I really don't know much about him. Could you let us know a little bit tell us about him a little bit?
Yeah, well, Chisu was he was a young Chinese boy, and I think he was, either his father was Chinese and his mother was English.
Oh.
And he was adopted. He was in Dr. Bernardo's, and he grew up as a young boy in Dr. Bernardo's. I don't know about why he was in Dr. Bernardo's. He never really mentioned this.
What is Dr. Bernardo's? Sorry, I don't even know what that is.
Dr. Bernardo is an orphanage. I'm also a Dr. Bernardo's kid as well. It means that, when in early days, and even now, Dr. Bernardo's is still going. It's for, children that are put into an orphanage that either they've lost their family or the family can't keep them, or, through diverse different problems, Dr. Bernardo was the main orphanage at that time.
Right. But he wasn't an orphan, was he? He was just there being taken care of while something was obviously going on with the family?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure whether his mother or his father died, and he was put into a home, into Dr. Bernardo's, the same as me. I mean, I believe that my family, that was quite a big family, and my father was killed, and because I was a young baby, the mother couldn't look after me, so she put me into Dr. Bernardo's for adoption.
Oh, okay.
So we went through the same path, really. But so Chisu, he that was his beginning of life. And the story is that when he used to play in a park, he met this old Chinese master, Chan Kam Li, okay, who evidently come from Shandong. And he started training with him when he was a young boy. And trained with him for quite a few years, learning this system which Chisu called Feng Shao, Hand of the Wind.
Okay, Feng Shao. All right, I get it. Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, called it Hand of the Wind style. So that's a little bit of his history. Then he got married and had... was my wife at the time, and another son, so 2 sons. Then he was during the war. He was drafted into the war, and he was a tank commander, and he ended up in Burma, where he was captured by the Japanese.
Oh wow!
And because of he looked Chinese, they thought he was one of them that was a spy, for the British. So he was quite badly tortured, and well, you know about the Japanese camps in Burma and around that area.
Right.
So many from the British soldiers from around this area where I live were, when they landed in Singapore or Burma, they were just captured straight away by the Japanese. So he had some nasty scars on his body, which evidently when he was being tortured. Anyway, the story is that he escaped from the prison camp, and he was reported dead for 3 years. And during that 3-year period, he worked with the Gurkhas behind the Japanese lines.
Oh, wow. He's had quite a life, this guy.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you know, they knock him for whatever, but he was a tough little guy. In fact, his commanding officer, Rupert Croft Cook, actually was an author, and he wrote a book called The Dogs of War, where he actually mentions Chisu. He mentions him. He said this guy would fight and wrestle anybody in the jungle.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, he had a bit of a record. Anyway, he got back to American lines, and then, you know, they had the same problem because they thought he was one of them, you know, being a spy
again.
Okay, so he had a rough old life, but yes, he was reported dead for 3 years. Anyway, he got back to England and continued with his life. He then trained in the Buddha Choir in London with the Japanese Aikido guy and the Judo people. And he got very, very, what's his name, the Aikido man, Hiro...
Ueshiba, the founder?
Ueshiba, yeah. Yeah, Ueshiba, yeah. He trained with Ueshiba in Aikido, and he also trained in Judo, of which he gained high levels.
Was the Judo that he was training in, was that the system that was started by Yuki Otani?
Yes, Otani, because he used to train with the Otani brothers.
Oh, okay.
Actually, there was 2 brothers, and they used to be in the Buddha Choir as well.
All right.
In fact, my ex-wife, Lavinia, used to train. Well, she was very young, but you know, she was on the mat when she was about 3 years old. You know, so
yeah.
Anyway, he stayed with the judo people for quite a long time, gaining very high grades, and then in early 50s, early 50s, he said, right, he fell out with the Japanese over, I don't know, some kind of problem, politics normally, or what it was. And he actually registered the British Wushu Federation in 1958.
Okay. Wow, so it's actually been around for a long time.
Yeah. And then I started training with him. I did do some judo with him many, many years ago because he was a local guy. My wife then was probably the only Chinese girl around the Dunstable and this area. Mm-hmm. She was probably the only Chinese girl at that time. So, and of course, she used to do a lot of demonstrations in judo and aikido at that time. Okay. So she was quite well known. And so anyway, I trained with him, but judo wasn't. I trained at it, but it wasn't for me. And like a lot of youngsters, I had to go. The only martial arts was about at that time was judo or karate.
Yeah.
You know, there was jiu-jitsu kind of thing, but there wasn't. You know, in the early 60s, late 50s, and early 60s, there wasn't many. It was mostly just judo and karate.
Right.
So I had to go to karate as well, and that didn't work for me either. Anyway, when I was at school, I took up boxing, schoolboy boxing, and I become pretty, you know, as a schoolboy boxer, pretty good. I won the ABA schoolboy championship and all this kind of thing.
Okay.
So I was never an academic at school, but I was well into sport.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to Chi Su is that I used to see this girl, Chinese girl, walking around, and I started chatting to her and whatever. And anyway, we got together, and she said, "Oh, you'll have to come and start training with my dad." And I said, "Well," I said, "he does judo and aikido." I said, "I'm not keen on that." She said, "No, he teaches kung fu now." I said, "Kung fu? What's kung fu?" And she said, "Oh, it's Chinese martial art," because we'd never heard of. Nobody knew what wushu was. In fact, still a lot of people don't know what wushu is.
It's a pork dish, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a pork dish, isn't it?
And so she said, "Oh, he teaches kung fu." So I said, "Oh yeah, I'll come and have a look." So I went up there one night. He was training at a local school, and there was about 8 people in the class. And I see him jumping about and kicking and punching and really, a lot of movement around. I thought, wow, this looks good. So that day on, I started training. And, in them days, he was a tough character. He was quite short, very stocky, and he could really move, and he had a lot of power. And I was completely taken by him at that time. Because he was something, for me, he was something very special.
Right.
And, I sparred with him and you couldn't get anywhere near him. And, when he hit you, you knew about it. And his training was tough, which I really enjoyed. And to be quite honest, at that time, I was a bit of an herbert. So that discipline, he was very disciplined. And, that was good for me, actually.
Yeah.
We continued to work together, and I got my instructor's certificate. I can't remember now whether it was 68 or 69. After about 3 or 4 years training. But I used to train 4 nights a week, and then I used to train. He used to do a lot of weekend courses, and I used to train, all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So I become his chief instructor after a while, and I spent a lot of time working with him.
Yeah.
Then we had the Kung Fu era.
When everybody was Kung Fu fighting.
Everybody was Kung Fu fighting. And, our classes went from half a dozen to about 200.
Oh, my God. Wow, that's a really popular class.
Yeah, and I was training. I was teaching at the Vauxhall's hall in Dunstable, and we had people doing, like, he used to call it Chi Shu, which is like a throw-in and locking technique system, which is like Aikido really, and he used to call it like Chinese Aikido. So there was people doing that, and there was about half a dozen of us doing Kung Fu, and then after the Bruce Lee era, then, it just went crazy. And our classes went to, whenever. And of course, he he was well known in the martial art field. So, I mean, he moved his classes, and he started opening classes in London. Well, of course, then it just went crazy. And he become very, very popular in London. And I mean, we done one course, and he was very popular down in Wales. I mean, I went down to Wales one weekend, and there was about 1,200 people there.
Oh, my God.
I mean, he had many, many, many students. It's reckoned that one time he had about 8,000 students.
That's insane. I never realized he was that popular and had that many students. Wow.
Yeah, and of course, he wrote quite a lot of books. And at this time, he was still quite active from the Kung Fu point of view. But the main problem is they started to treat him, everybody was treating him like a god.
Yeah, so that happens a lot, huh?
And what happened, he started to believe that.
Yeah, went to his head.
It did. And there was a lot of things happening, from a family point of view. And my daughter his daughter could always sort of talk to him because they were very close, obviously. And there was a lot of things started to happen, and she started to, sort of like check her dad, what was going on. And he just completely wouldn't have anything to do with her. So, in fact, he completely blanked her once he started questioning certain things that was going on.
Oh, really?
And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it became unacceptable. So that's when we left.
Okay.
And it was in the sort of like late 70s. We left, and that's when I formed my own federation.
Right.
Of course, being vulnerable and not being naive at that time, I couldn't take up the word. He told me if I ever used feng xiao or if I ever used the word wushu, he would sue me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, of course, I didn't realise at that time that feng xiao, okay, was his system, or his system, if you like, but wushu is a generic term, you know, so I didn't know that at that time. So in 1979, I set up the Wugong Federation.
Right, Wugong. Yeah, and that's I mean, that's how I knew you, as the Wugong originating guy. So, yeah.
Yeah, because though it's got we've got it down as Wukong, because at the time most of the people that we knew, Chinese people that we knew, were from either Hong Kong, Malaysia, and were Cantonese.
Well, that was also the term that was used in the West. Even today, a lot of people who don't know, they'll still call it Kung Fu, right? So,
yes, majority of people call it Kung Fu. So we called it Wugong, and then I set up my own federation, and he went in, as a lot of people do as they get older, into this esoteric, I think that's the right word, esoteric way going on.
It's also pronounced bullshit, but it depends on who you're talking to.
Well, yeah. I mean, and he used to do all these tricks, before he used to do all these tricks of pushing people over, and people couldn't lift him, and and when he was young, when I first started training with him, he was powerful and he could do this kind of thing, you know. So I did try it, but I worked in clubs where you get the guys come in with their t-shirts two sizes too small and want to have a go at you, and I tried. I think all this sort of kind of thing you can do with students that you've been working with and you sort of got some control over them, which happens between a teacher and student relationship. You can do all this kind of thing, but if you take somebody off the street and try and do it, you're going to get your nose broken very quickly,
Yeah, for sure.
What one of the main things was happening, when I was training, they'd been training with Jisu, then they would come and I'd be running some of the courses for him, and they was talking that, well, you can't hit me because I've got an armful of chi and all this old, I'm thinking of the right word, rubbish, or as you said, bullshit. And I just thought to myself, you get a karate guy or somebody that's a bit handy and, a boxer or somebody like that, they're going to knock your head off. Right. And for me, teaching a kung fu system with that kind of
bullshit,
with that kind of bullshit is very, very dangerous. All this stuff started to go on, and that's one of the reasons why I left.
Was what you mentioned earlier, that his daughter had also approached him about? Was some of it that?
Yeah, that, and there was other things going on as well, which I don't want to really talk about. But there was other problems going on as well, and she sort of confronted him with it, and he just blanked her, and after that, he didn't have much to do with her, and then he left anyway. The family split up, and he left.
Oh, where did he go?
Well, he moved off to London for a while, and then he ended up down in Wales because he had a big, massive group following in Wales. Though he used to travel around the country, every weekend he'd be in a different place in the country. He had like I say, I mean, I went up north up to Hull once, and he was doing a course at a karate school up there, and there must have been 200 to 300 karate people in the seminar. You know, it
Wow.
was. I walked in because he rang me up on the Friday night. He said, "Pete, can you come up?" He says, "I've got so many people here, I can't. You know, I need help."
Are you interested in learning authentic traditional Chinese martial arts of Xingyi Quan and Baguazhang? Well, if that's the case, the Huajin Online Learning Program is for you. The Huajin Online Learning Program is the premier distance learning program where you can learn authentic arts of Hebei Xingyi Quan and Liang style Baguazhang in a comprehensive and in-depth manner from wherever you are. Featuring over 120 in-depth lessons covering aspects of individual training, technique refinement, forms, application, partner work, conditioning, internal skill building and qigong, and much more. The Huajin Online Learning Program has been running successfully for over 3 years and is highly praised by participants within the program. So start your journey into learning authentic classical Chinese martial arts today by visiting mushinmartialculture.com to find out more or to sign up directly at patreon.com/mushinmartialculture. That is the Huajin Online Learning Program. Enroll today. Yeah.
So I drove up to Hull on Friday night, and you know, when I walked into the class next morning, I've never seen so many white jackets in rows. You know, they're all lined up.
Yeah.
It was massive, and I thought, oh my God. And there was, you know, quite a few downgrades. And I mean, even at that time, he would take 2 or 3 of them on at a time, and nobody could get near him.
Okay.
You know, I said these karate guys were good, you know, they're very powerful. But at that time, it was mostly Shotokan, and they were very rigid, you know. And of course, Chisu, he said, he always used to say to me, if you can evade, you don't have to fight.
Right.
Using evasion techniques, you know, and we used to do a lot of evasion techniques and distance training, you know, which is a lot that people don't practice. But he's a lot of his technique was about evasion and distance training. So, you know, you can be just out of range, but they can be in range and that kind of thing, which is a lot of people don't train that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because you know, given his background, being a veteran, actually being on the front lines, being in jungles, he definitely would know. And as you said, a book was written where it mentions his abilities, so he definitely knows how to fight. But it is funny how fame and the cult mentality can get to people really quickly in those situations. I mean, it's rather tragic, but you know, because he obviously had valuable things he was teaching, but you know, he just took the other route towards the end, which is, it's sad.
It is sad because he used to teach the Lee style Tai Chi, which we did try to you know, trace it. When I get on to Master Huang Jifu, which was my next teacher, you know, we did try to trace it, but because we didn't have the written name of his Chan Kam Lee, we wanted his actually Chinese written name. We could have probably traced him back to Shandong because that was Master Huang's expertise, because he used to be able to do things like that. But we could never get the written name because we didn't have it. So therefore he said, without the written name, I can't trace him. It evidently come from Shandong.
Well, I mean, if it's Li style, I mean, it comes from Bizi Li. I'm sure you know by now, obviously, the history of...
Yeah.
So
well,
it is a derivative of Yang style, but it comes through a prominent practitioner. And it's highly probable that, you know, it came through Shandong to whoever he learned. And, you know, so that's quite interesting because that's quite early in the days. When he was at his peak and he was so popular and, you know, those classes were so full, there probably weren't many Chinese martial arts teachers in England, am I right?
There was a few. There was Jeremy Yao, Lao Ga, Hong Kong.
Yeah.
C.K. Chang was also, they had big groups as well. Not only Chi Su, you know, they had, Jeremy Yao had a massive group, probably even bigger than than Chi Su. But Jeremy Yao really specialised in sparring side of it. And many of his students swapped from Taekwondo, come to him. And they were good fighters, you know. So he done his Lao Gar, but I think his money making was the sparring side of it.
Okay.
Sort of run them side by side, if you like, because a lot of the fighters just done the fighting, and I know some of his students practice the Lao Gar.
Okay.
So, you know, there was a few about, and of course, what happened is every Chinese waiter or chef become a kung fu master.
Of course.
Yeah, so you know, there were kung fu schools set up everywhere, and that's when the British Council it was called the British Kung Fu Council, and Chi Su, Jeremy Yao, and a few of the Chinese from Chinatown in Hong Kong, in London, were the government set it up under the Karate Federation, because a lot of people the government was, because of the boom, a lot of karate clubs were changing, putting black suits on, calling themselves kung fu clubs, because, you know, everybody jumped on the Bruce Lee bandwagon, you know.
So everybody was kung fu fighting. It wasn't just a clever song.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. So it was quite interesting. So they set up this kung fu federation, and under the Karate Federation, and they got picked. You know, a few people got involved, and Chi Su was one of the main people. Jeremy Yao and a few English people got involved as well. And of course, I used to go to these meetings, and to be honest, it was like big brawl in Little China. You know, it was
Really?
all my dad's bigger than your dad, and my style's better than your style, and there was a lot of that going, because a lot of the Hong Kong people, it was from Wing Chun and Mantis, and you know, some of the styles in Hong Kong, and after a lot of negotiation, the British Kung Fu Council was set up. So I was in it right from the beginning, and this was in the very early 70s. Of course, when I left Chi Su, he was still in it, but I couldn't join because I'd left him. But I had to form my own group and then prove that I'd done Chinese martial arts, because I think because of his success, everybody was saying, well, what he's doing is all made up and blah, 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 all this kind of thing, which, you know, some of it may have been. But, you know, from my point of view, what I learned I thought was very useful.
Right. What was he teaching back before he started going into the woo-woo kind of esoteric stuff?
Well, when he went to London, he started to change things.
So before that?
Before that, he was teaching, like, I learned Kung Fu, but, you know, I have always called it the old Shui Jiao, because there was punching, kicking, locking, throwing, you name it, it was in it.
Right.
You know, so we used to spend a lot of time routine. We had some routines, but the routines were, you know, he didn't pay a lot. When I was training with him, we done routines, but they were very short, very sharp, and he didn't pay a lot of attention to him. He was more a technician, you know, fighting technician person, doing the sparring and doing the individual techniques and learning the by distance, evasion, this kind of thing, locking, throwing, groundwork, all the stuff that you see that's very popular now. He was actually teaching all that in the 60s.
Well, that's the good thing about, and that's probably what attracted the karate people was, you know, as karate became crystallized and then went international, it became very focused on certain things, and then as soon as you start to have competition, then they focus even more on specific things as opposed to everything. But if you have like specifically, let's just say older systems, and I'll just take Chinese as a example because that's what we're talking about predominantly. they have aspects of punching, kicking, throwing, locking, takedowns, etc., which is outside of the realm of standardization. So when the karate people, which, if you look at classical karate, of course it has all of that stuff. But when you start to look at more standardized JKA and then going into competition, it's not as heavily focused on that. So that was probably why they got attracted to what he was teaching, was because it was so multifaceted. I mean, that's one thing that would attract somebody for sure.
Definitely. I mean, later on in life, when I was training with Master Huang, and then I bought my property and opened the clinic and the training centre. I did have quite a few high-grade karate people come to me to learn, the locking, throwing, because all their stuff is distance training, distance, long distance. And Chisu all used to say, if you're in the middle range, you're going to get hit. Yeah. You're either at range or you're in so close they don't know what to do.
I mean, that's really if you know the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu original ideas, it was exactly that. Stay outside so you can't get struck. If you're not there, come all the way in so you can take the guy down and finish the job from there. So that's very, very similar to that system's ideas.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what we learned. And, you can just be out of range but still be in range with Asian techniques. So, and that's, I play around with people now and I use this technique and they say, they've just punched, but I'm out of their range, but I've hit them. And it's just interesting, and people say, how did you do that? Well, of course, that's part of the training.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So
Shingy,
you said... Yeah.
Shingy, same thing as well. That's why I've taken to Shingy very well, because I love it, because what I've learned before fits in lovely to what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's what we'll get into. So you moved on, you and your wife, which was Chisu's daughter, and you set up your organization. And then what did you do in terms of the content and your learning and from there?
Well, from that, in 79, I had quite a good group myself, but I had to go to the British Kung Fu Council, and obviously I knew everybody in it. And they said, well, you've got to set up your system, and it's got to be completely separate to Chisu, different name, blah, 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 and whatever. So I done that, calling it the Wukong Federation. Then I took a team of my students. We had to demonstrate. In them days, to get into the British Kung Fu Council, you had to demonstrate that you was doing a Chinese system. And they set it up for the safety of students, really, because many people were getting ripped off. So anyway, I done this demonstration and I was accepted into the BCCMA.
Okay.
British Kung Fu Council, as it was called at that time.
Right.
So I joined, and I had 200 or 300 students at that time. So things were going well, and but I was missing. There was always something missing, and when you reach a certain stage, when you've been practicing for a while, you think there's something missing somewhere in what I'm doing. But I couldn't find it myself.
Yeah.
And during the early 80s, I would say, I was beginning to struggle a little bit with myself. I think I was losing my own confidence.
Okay.
And anyway, we found that through the British Kung Fu Council, I don't know how it happened actually, but we had two coaches come over from China, one teaching Chengquan and one teaching Nanjing.
Okay.
So they were going to run courses in London. So I thought, well, I must go up and have a look at this, because we knew nothing. I didn't know what Nanchuan was. I didn't know what Chengquan was. I had no idea, because at that time there was no inlet into mainland China.
Right.
So we only knew what was coming from Malaysia, Singapore, or
Hong Kong.
but most Hong Kong, and it was because of Hong Kong's, Britain. Most Chinese in England at that time were Hong Kong people. So obviously it was the styles from Hong Kong. But so I went up and started training. And I'd never seen anything like it. These two coaches, they were out. Oh, it was like magic. It was like, oh my God, And so we started training with them, and they had an interpreter with them called Master Jifu Huang.
Okay.
And he's quite mid-50s gentleman and glasses, and quite portly, and. I just thought he was a translator. I never took, we used to talk to him and everything. Anyway, I went training with him a couple of times, and I started talking to him, and he seemed such a nice person, And then somebody come up to me and they said, "Do you know who he is?" And I said, "No." He said, "This man's is a master. And he knows many, many schools of martial arts. He also knows the 5 schools of Tai Chi and all this kind of thing." Mm-hmm. And in them days, I used to practice the Lee style Tai Chi, if you like, but I never took to it because it wasn't my thing. I thought, I don't want. I was big and strong. I wanted to do the tough side of things, the fighting side of it. So I done it just to please Chi Su, really. Right. But he did say to me, I always remember saying he did say to me once, if you want to learn real martial arts, you should learn Tai Chi. Wow. And that's always stuck in my mind. So anyway, I got chatting to Master Huang Jifu, and the Chinese coaches went back to China, and then they come back again. And I had, during that period, I started I started talking to Master Huang, and I told him, about Chi Su, and he'd heard about him, but, so I was training him, and he says, "Okay." He says, "What do you?" He says, "I said, would you teach me?" And I was emphasising more on Tai Chi then. So I said, "Would you teach me some Tai Chi?" So he goes, "Yeah, okay, no problem. Come along to this London school at such and such a time." So I travelled up to London. I lived in Milton Keynes then, so I lived in Stanbridge at that time, near Milton Keynes, and so I travelled up to London went to this school. And have you heard of a Nigel Sutton?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I went in there, and Nigel was already a student of Master Huang.
Oh, okay.
So, and he'd come from a karate background, but he'd already been training with Master Huang.
Okay.
So there was only me, Nigel, and I think a couple of others in the class, because Huang didn't charge us. He said, "Come up and train." So we didn't pay him anything. And I started training with Nigel, and we started training in the 24 and, all the stuff. And then we done the 24 and the 48 as it was in them days. And we was training, and we done a lot of push hands, which Nigel was very, very good at.
Right.
And, and then it went on from there. And then with Master Huang, I become very, very close to him. And, Nigel actually went to Singapore. He got married to a Malaysian girl, and then he became a student of somebody else in Singapore, which was detrimental to Master Huang. So, I worked with Master Huang and stayed with him. We travelled everywhere, went Singapore, Malaysia, China, Taiwan. And it doesn't matter where that man went, he knew everybody.
But where was he from originally, do you know?
Well, he was born in China, but he was a Singaporean, and I found out that he was a secret policeman.
Oh, okay. That's probably why he knew everyone. He probably knew what you ate for breakfast every morning as well.
Yeah, well, evidently he was a very, how can I put it? I didn't find this out till later. He told me he was a policeman.
Okay.
But I found out later that he was very high up under Lee Kuan Yew, under, the man that set Singapore up.
Right.
He was working for him.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So, but he was such a quiet guy. But, I mean, he gave me a list of all the systems that he worked in, and... he'd done an awful lot of things. I mean, his right hand, his knuckle was like a great big, what would you say, a bolt.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was massive. And when he used to sit down, he always put his left hand over his right, so he always kept... And I remember him telling me once he'd done all this training to get it, and then, when in the police force, he realised that people could stand 30 feet away from you and shoot you. So he said, because I trained with him under the iron palm and done all the knee. We done the iron palm, the fist, with the mung-bean bags and with all the kneading and all this kind of thing. I done the iron shirt with him for a while. He had 5 levels, and I got to the 4th level. And he said, okay, the 5th level is, you've got to refrain from sex for 100 days.
Right.
And I do all this special training and whatever. This is to draw up the testicles.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and he said, you draw up the testicles so that people can kick you, blah, blah, and all this kind of thing. And he started laughing. And, of course, at this time, I'm probably in my early 40s. So he started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He said, you're an old man. I said, what do you mean? He says, if you draw up, maybe they don't come down. And he thought it was so funny. I never done level 5.
Well, I think that would scare me away from level 5 as well. Imagine they don't come back down. You've got a high-pitched voice and it'll be a funny day at the beach. Yeah.
And the 100 days of no sex didn't work either. So not at that time anyway. So
didn't appeal to you.
So I never done level 5. So I studied with him for a long, long time. We went to China, and of course, it was him that brought Grandmaster Chen Yuhe, who was one of his teachers, over to England in the mid-80s.
Oh wow!
And I met Chen Yuhe, and he brought over a couple of his people, Master Ko and some of the other top people in Singapore. He always come over with a group of, 3 or 4 people. Right. Anyway, I started training with Chen Yuhe, and that's when I started learning Xingyi.
Yeah, I remember you even shared some photos of Chen Yuhe in his younger days doing some Xingyi movements, 1 or 2 photos.
Yeah. And, we'd done the seminars. I used to do 2 seminars. On the Saturday, we would do Tai Chi and pushing hands. And on the Sundays, we used to do the Xingyi and Qigong. Okay. And a bit around a bit. I mean, there was a lot of push hands going on because the people that he brought over were push hands people. Master Ko, who was my favourite, used to come over, was a Bagua man.
Oh, wow.
And, I mean, when he pushed you, you hit the crash mat, you'd be 2 foot in the air.
Do you know what kind of Bagua he did?
It was... No, I can't remember the name because I started learning with him. And it through business and whatever, it become very difficult. So, but anyway, I started training with Chen Yuhe, and he come over, and I went to Singapore, and we become, I become quite a good thing. And then Master Huang said to me, "Would you like to become Chen Yuhe's disciple?" Wow. And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "But what about you?" And he said, no, you don't want... He said, "I want you to become my teacher's disciple."
Oh, wow.
So I felt that was a fantastic honour. Because really, Jifu Huang was, as far as I'm concerned, was my teacher. but he said, no, he said, I want you to be a disciple of my teacher.
Which would, in the lineage would make you and and him basically the same generation and brothers, actually. Him being older anyway, but still.
Yeah, and I mean, I really, I wasn't sure about that kind of etiquette, but of course I've learned a lot more about it since then, about what he done. So there was me and another student, I can't remember his name now. We both become disciples of Chen Yuhe, and we had the big dinner in London, and Ringo Lo and John Howe, and there was about 15 Chinese masters attended the dinner to to sanction my, the tea ceremony.
And to witness it. What year was that? Do you remember?
That was 87.
Okay. It's a long time ago. It's almost 40 years ago.
Yeah, 87. So then through the Kung Fu Council, Master Huang joined it as well. Because it was in such a state, he became the treasurer because there was money going into it. Nobody knew where it was going. So he become the treasurer. And so then in 87 or early 88, they said, there's a judges course coming up in China to learn these routines. And I was still very interested in this Changquan and Nanquan and all this kind of thing. I was still very interested in it.
Yeah.
And when I was training with Master Huang, he said, you're at the age, he says, you want to learn as much as you can about Wushu. He says, because one day you'll come back and you'll only be teaching one routine. But he said, within that routine will be all the experience that you've learned.
Okay.
So he said, learn as much as you can. He said, when he was training with his masters, like Chen Yuhe, he'd say, go. He said he'd done judo for 3 years. He'd done this for 2 years. He'd done that because Chen Yuhe sent him everywhere to learn different things when he was training with him. He said he was sending to, he had a good friend that was a Bagua teacher, and he had another one that done Luhe Bei Fe, and he had another one doing Mantis, he had another one doing whatever. So he sent he sent me to all these different people to train to learn many different things.
Okay.
So which is unlike most teachers.
Right, that's true.
Yeah, because once they've got you as a student, they want to keep you.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
And what I found with Master Huang was when he took on other people and he sent everybody in different directions. Well, obviously my direction was from a judging point of view. So I went to Shanghai. I mean, never. You couldn't fly into China in them days. I think I flew into Taiwan.
Okay.
I flew into Bangkok.
Oh, wow.
And then I flew from Bangkok to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, because I was on my own, flying into Bangkok, I had an 8-hour wait for a flight into Shanghai. So I had to wait 8 hours. But coming off the plane from Bangkok, I was marked into a room. All my stuff was searched. There was people with machine guns, two guards, two police with machine guns at the door, and they went through my case, threw everything on the floor, blah blah blah, because they got coming from Bangkok. They thought I was a drug
mule. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, there was nothing there, obviously. So coming out. Anyway, I was completely out. I didn't know what was going on half the time. Anyway, we were still sitting in this room, and this little window opened, and all the Chinese just rushed to this window, pushing and fighting to get on this flight for Shanghai.
Oh,
and, and all it was a little, like a serving hatch, and so somebody said to me, you go Shanghai, one of the Chinese, Hong Kong China. I said, yeah. He said, you better get up there and fight your way through the front, otherwise you won't get on the plane.
Oh, jeez.
So I got up there and sort of got to the front and managed to get on the flight. Anyway, I got to Shanghai and was picked up by what's his name, the head of the Hon President.
Oh, okay. The Chen. No.
No, he was a Chin Wu man.
Okay.
He was the head of the Shanghai Physical Institute.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Wang Pei Kun.
My whole life is a lie.
Are floppy Chinese swords getting you down? Do you practice traditional Chinese martial arts but have difficulty locating and sourcing firm, solid steel training swords? Well, look no further. Available now on the Mushin Martial Culture online store are high-quality, custom-made, hard steel traditional training swords. Made from the highest quality materials, these swords have both the feel and weight distribution of traditional, authentic Chinese martial arts swords, featuring high-quality scabbards, as well as the option to include a historically accurate handle wrap. This sword is built to last. Head on over to the Mushin Martial Culture online store to order yours today. Available as well on the store are other items, apparel, training shoes, and other unique Chinese martial arts merchandise. The URL is mushinmartialculture.com. Ditch the tin foil and get yourself a sword you can be proud of. Right? He was at the sport. Yeah, he was at the sports university.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So I was picked up by him and another one of the top coaches, and they took me to the university, and I went to bed. And then 5 o'clock in the morning, hammering on the door, come up, ready, we must train. So you just imagine the flight. I mean, my travelling was about 27 hours, I think, to get to China.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, I got up and I went downstairs, and we got all outside, and there was quite a few people there. And
that was the first. That was before the International Federation even existed.
Yeah. This was 88.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went for the training. We had to train every morning, learning Changchuan, Nanchuan, and whatever. But Grandmaster Chen said, "I want you to meet my two brothers, Wushu brothers. One was Kuli Singh, the Chen, who was a student of Chen Fa-ke.
Okay, yeah.
And the other one was Lu Hebei Fe, what was his name? I could never remember his name.
Liu Hebafa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name as well, but I think I know who you're talking about. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, I can't. I wrote his name down. In fact, my Master Ling gave me his name because I couldn't remember it, and he actually sent me his name because he knew him as well.
Right.
I've got it written down. Anyway, so the problem is that in that time, in China at that time, you had to have FEC money.
It wasn't Zhou Shu Shen, was it?
Huh?
Zhou Shu Shen.
No.
He was also the famous Eagle Claw teacher.
No, it wasn't him. Oh. No, he was only. I don't like. See.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
No, I can't. I've got his name here. I'll find it in a minute. Anyway, right. He wanted me to go and see them. Well, of course, as I was part of the institute, you wasn't allowed to go with anybody outside. But of course, I didn't know this. And my roommate was Christopher Pei. You know
Okay.
Christopher Paper
Yeah. From the
SA?
States. Yeah.
Yeah. He was my roommate, and they put me with him because I didn't know a word of Chinese.
Yeah.
Though Master Huang had been trying to teach me, but I went to China for 32 years. My Chinese is still bloody awful. But anyway, what we used to do is we had three. I used to train in the morning with sports university people. Then we used to go out. When you went out at that time, you could only go to a friendship store.
Yeah, of course.
You wasn't allowed to go shopping or anywhere, and you always had a chaperone there, but you had a policeman with. So I used to meet this old man. His name was Liu.
Okay.
Oh, Lu Guayao.
Okay.
Lu Guayao.
Wasn't who I was thinking of, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, Lu Guayao. He was a very well-known man in Shanghai at that time.
Yeah.
And so he was one of Chen Yuhe's older brothers.
Okay.
And so I used to go out with him, and we'd go and out drink tea and whatever. And he always used to have a couple of young students with him that could speak, English or some form of English. And I used to go with him, and we used to drink tea. And I didn't train with him, but I used to go with him, and he started showing me some stuff from Lu He. And he said he only had one disciple, and his disciple was killed in a car crash or something.
Oh, no.
And he didn't want to teach Chinese people, young Chinese people, because they haven't got the discipline now of what they should have to do. So he asked me to be his disciple.
Okay.
But I had to stay in China for 1 year and only train with him. I couldn't do anything else. Well, that was I thought, what an opportunity. But of course, I jumped on my building, and I was building it all up, which is another story. And young family, young wife, young business. There's no way I could stay in China I stayed in China for 3 months as it was, but I couldn't stay in China for any longer than that. So I said that to him, and he said he cut it down to 6 months in the end, but I still couldn't.
He's haggling with you. You were haggling with him.
He said, because he really was looking, for...
You wanted to hand it down to someone, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it couldn't happen. Anyway, I got back to the university one night, and Christopher Pay was waiting for me, and he said what trouble I was in, and because what we used to do, we used to go to the gift store, and then this old man, friendship store, and what we used to do, we used to lose the guide, and this old man was quite fast, we used to lose him, and then he'd have a taxi waiting, and we'd go off to a tea room somewhere and whatever, and of course then he'd take me back to the university. Well, I walked in. This happened quite, most nights. And he said, I got back in, and Chris was waiting for me, and he said, you're in trouble. And I said, why? And he said, well, because you avoided your guard, and they don't know where you've been, and they're really worried about you in case you've been kidnapped. Not kidnapped, but, whatever.
Had some trouble.
Which was a load of rubbish, really. Anyway, got in, and this was a line of the top people from the university, and they were, very, very angry with me. And I didn't realise at the time, because I thought I'd paid all this money to go to Shanghai, learn this routine, meet these people from my teacher's point of view, and these people telling me I couldn't do it. Well, I was that kind of nature in them days. You're not telling me what I can or can't do. Yeah. Me not thinking I was in a country that you can't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't realise, but I was very close to being deported.
Oh, wow.
because that's how bad it was. You know, the country was still, still people walking about in blue suits with red books in their pocket.
Yeah, those little green suits, with red mile books.
Yeah. And so, anyway, that's what it happened. But luckily enough, he'd taken me to see Cooley Singh. And at that time, I met somebody in the university who'd done Chen style Tai Chi, and that's what I really wanted to learn. So what I'd done from after that, I concentrated every morning training with this coach to learn the Chen style Tai Chi, which was Ilu, the first.
Ilu. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, first one. He wanted to teach me the Paltran, but we didn't really have time because I was learning, at that time there was 7 routines we had to learn. Was the Chang Tren, the Nan Tren, the Dao, the Gun, the Dao, the Gun, the Chiang, and the Tai Chi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the Tai Chi. So there was 7 disciplines at that time. Well, of course, I had to not learn them as an athlete, but I had to learn them as which was all quite new.
You had to be somewhat competent, yeah.
Yeah, you had to be competent in them. So, of course, I'd never seen anything like this before. Though I'd seen the coaches and that kind of thing, I was aware of it. And Master Huang had sort of prepped me for it, but there was nothing like the real thing, So I've been getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, training for about 3 hours in the Chen style Tai Chi, having breakfast. Then there was 3 lectures. And then, as you know, in the afternoon, you do a lecture for an hour, and then you would do the training, and then in the evening you do a lecture for an hour, and then you do more training.
Yeah.
It was full on. And because I was doing Taolu, the only Caucasian there was Pat Rice.
From the States?
From the States, yeah.
Yeah. She
was there. And there was a couple of other Europeans there, but they were all doing sand art. There was an Italian guy, Petru was there, and who was the little guy that used to be with him at that time, was his boss. They were there, and somebody from Mexico was there, but they were all in sand art. So there was about 90 people.
Okay.
All mostly from China, Indonesia, Japan,
Southeast Asia and Asia.
Yeah, Southeast Asia. Yeah, they was all. Only me and Pat were the only Caucasians in the Taolu group. Anyway, we done the course and I passed the exam. I mean, I don't know what the pass rate was because we was never told, but they picked 8 people to be judges at the the invitational wushu competition in Hangzhou.
Okay.
So that was invitational one. Pat Rice they also picked, but she wanted to compete at that time, so she competed in the Tai Chi group doing Yang style because she was a student of Yang Chendo, and so she wanted to compete. So you can't do both. So there was only me in the judging. So they only picked 8 out of the 90 people, they picked 8 people to judge at the invitational competition. And of course, the other judges were all Chinese.
Yeah.
So that was my first introduction to judging. And I'll always remember it. I was in the long weapon group, the spear group one time. And I mean, the group, there was about 80 people in it, and after watching 80 routines, of course, they weren't all set routines, they were all different because they had some set routines, but mostly people were doing their own thing. So I was in that group, and then what was the other group I was in? I was in the long weapon group, and then I think they put me in the short weapon group, which was can't remember if it was a sword or I think it was a broadsword.
Okay.
That was it. Anyway, I got my certificate and blah blah blah. I got 2 certificates. One because it comes in 2 parts. One for the course and one for the judging. So after that, I went back down to Hong Kong no, to Shenzhen, where the sand art. They'd done the first sand art competition. So I went down to the sandar and I watched the sandar, and the guy that was teaching me Nanjing was quite, I can't remember his name, Yao somebody. That was his Chinese name, Mandarin name, Yao somebody. And he was very famous for his Nanjing. And he was, you know, in them days at the competition, you know, at the judges' competition, you had people like Chai Long Yung,
Tai Long Yu. Yeah.
Chai Long Yung, Sai Chai. My teacher in the Changchun was his student.
Okay.
You know, so you was learning core principles of the movement.
Of course.
You know.
It's a different generation to what it became.
Yeah. And I mean, there was Chen Wang was there, Yang Chen Do was there, Li Da-yin were there. You know, all these were at the judging course and at the competition.
Yeah.
So, you know, and someone were head judges at the competition. So, you know, the training was good. You know, it was very thorough. And you learned the good basis and the chip and gong of what you needed to do.
Yeah.
And so from then on, I come back, and Master Huang was very happy, and because he said, you know, he's very happy, and that's when we travelled around more different places. And of course, then we had the competition in '91, and Chen Yuhe, I still continued training with Chen Yuhe, though. I was introduced to Li Da-yin.
Yeah.
And Professor Li Huang said, you know, if you want to learn Tai Chi, this guy is good. But of course I found... and Li Tianji.
Yeah.
Tianji was there.
Li Tianji, who created 24 Tai Chi, basically.
Yeah, and the 48 and the 88, yeah. But of course, there's Xingyi people, you know.
Yeah, there's Xingyi people. That's it. So that's what a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays it's better known, but still.
Yeah, it's better known. And sword people.
Yeah.
And anyway, because my first trip to the competition in the coach, Li Tianji come and sat next to me. Because I'd met Li Da-yin and they knew, Huang Jifu knew them very well.
Yeah.
And so they knew I was his student. So they looked after me. And Li Tianji, everywhere Li Tianji was there smiling at me, you know, giving me support.
Oh, that's
because,
nice.
You know, I was shitting my pants, I must admit, when I because you're sitting on your own, you know, there's not a line of judges.
Yeah, you're in one corner.
You're in one corner. Yeah, well, there's 5 judges, and you're one of the judges, and you're sitting there, and I'm sitting there. And I'm looking at routines that I've never seen before, and I'm thinking, you know. Anyway, I got through it. But it was quite interesting. I thought sometimes for certain people, my marking was well out. And I didn't know why. I tried to find out why. And at that invitational competition, I mean, I would have never found out.
Yeah.
But I tried to find out afterwards. And then we carried on and training with Chen Yuhe, and then we had Li Da-yin over, so I started training with him, learning the 24 from him as well. Though I'd already learned it from Master Huang. I learned the 48, because at that time the 42 wasn't developed.
Yeah.
They were still in the 42. So what they used to do, they used to use the 48 and cut one section out. So I brought it down 6 minutes. So I was training with Chen Yuhe and Li Da-yin, and I started training Xingyi with Professor Li. And of course, Chen Yuhe got the old way of training, like follow me, you know, where Li Da-yin had a scientific way of coaching. Yeah. And his way of coaching is very, very good. I mean, I was very impressed with his coaching. So, and, you know, the transition, you know, like Chen Yuhe would talk to you about these different things, but with Professor Li, he'd itemise every transition movement. so you knew the pathway to the posture.
Oh, okay.
And for me, that was very important.
Well, that is where the skill is.
Well, everybody trains the posture, but nobody looks at the transition movement.
Yeah.
And if the transition movement's not correct, then the posture won't be correct, So, and that's the way I started teaching. So I class these as my main teachers is Chisu for like the fighting and all that kind of stuff. Chen Yuhe for the traditional way. Master Huang for his philosophy and learning my correct posture, because your posture is correct, where Chisu didn't worry too much about that, where Master Huang completely changed my structure and my posture.
Dragon Body, Tiger Spirit, a translation and explanation of the classic text of Xing Yi Quan, is available now. This critically acclaimed work presents, translates, and explains the core classical texts of the art of Xing Yi Quan, many of which have been utilized by other arts, including Taiji Chuan, Bagua Zhang, and others. Available in hardcover, softcover, and ebook versions. Get your copy today from MushinMartialCulture.com or from Amazon. Take your practice to the next level with Dragon Body, Tiger Spirit.
And then especially continued on that on a coach, a really, really in-depth coaching way of coaching.
Well, that's really good.
So, that's my basis really. And though I've worked with other people, as you know, within the IWF, so we've worked with some very, very eminent masters, that have been brought in at different times, as you know. Yeah. And by being with them and working with them and listening and learning with them, you learn a lot more that from that's not in the manual, if you get what I mean.
Oh, for sure. And it's actually, looking back, I mean, I started in the official organizational stuff much later than you, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things today, it's over 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago that I started. And even back then, compared to today, it's completely different.
Yeah. So I mean, it was quite interesting when we got to the 91 championships. Li Ming Warr was like the head, which was he was an old, he marched with Chairman Mao. So
yeah,
he was, he used to fall asleep every meeting, but it was
Li Ming Warr. Yeah.
Then they brought in Chang Shan.
Yes, Zhang Shan.
Yeah, he was the chief, the who run it, and it was very. We were sitting around the table, and he was giving out all the orders and everything. And then he said, "Of course." And there was only me sitting at as a Caucasian. Everybody else was, South Asian, Japanese,
Chinese, East Asian, yeah.
And lucky there was some Philippine people there. There was a big guy there who was at it at the time, was a really good guy and spoke really good English. And Chung Chun turned around and said, of course, he said, none of you are judges. He said that you won't be judges, we will use you at this competition and then you'll have to go to another judging course to become judges. And of course, that created a big problem. All the judges that were there had been at the 88 judging course.
Of course, yeah.
And,
78,
so
right?
So
88. Sorry, yeah.
So he said, you won't be classified as judges afterwards. You will have to do a proper judges course. Of course, the International Wushu Federation hadn't been done, so our judging course come under the Chinese Wushu Association.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we said a lot of rumbling going on. Anyway, we all had the judges had a meeting, and they said they didn't think it was fair that we spent all that money and time in Shanghai learning the judging system, and now we're not classed as judges, and they still want us to judge at the competition.
Yeah.
So, me being me, they put me forward as the chairman of the judges. And I told Chung Shun at the next meeting that we had that we was all going on strike.
Their favorite thing to hear, I'm sure.
You could see the blood drain out of his face.
You know, I saw him again a couple of months ago. I should have reminded him of this because I remember you told me the story some years back. But yeah, should have reminded him. Peter says hi. He says we're going on strike again. I should have said that to him.
He couldn't. You know, the Chinese. The people. They looking at one another. They couldn't believe it, and they said, "You can't do that. You can't do that." And we said, "We will, unless we get our judges' certificates."
Right.
So then I had to have a meeting with Lee Ming Hua and me, and I can't remember what I was talking about now, but I said to him, all the judges are unanimous, is that we all went to Shanghai, spent all that time and money, which was a lot of money in that era.
Of course.
We've all got passed as judges, judges, and now you're saying we're not judges and we won't be classed as judges. Anyway, come back, and luckily the group that was there didn't cave in, and because there was a lot of pressure on them to cave in, I think some of the Chinese caved in, but the group, the Indonesian, the Japanese didn't. And anyway, he had to forfeit, and he said, "Okay, after this, you will get your international judges certificate." So that was the first time, and Chung Shun has hated me ever since.
Yeah, I can believe it.
We had a drinking competition, and he tried to get me drunk, but in them days I could drink quite a lot, so it was him that got drunk. So,
so he double hated you.
That's another story. That's on for the first term. Then Wu Bin was vice chairman at the time.
So you just going back to that event, that was 91, right? That competition.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't know if you remember, about a month ago I sent you a photo. Because, you know, my teacher gave me basically all his old, I mean, you know him, he's like me, he collects books. And he gave me all his old magazines and a bunch of his old books that he had collected over the years, and he wanted me to have them. And there was a special edition of Zhonghua Wushu, which is the first official, Chinese martial arts magazine's official. It was recognized here by the Chinese Wushu Association. Started in the early 80s. And he gave me a bunch of them, and one of them that was in there was the 91 First World Wushu Championships special edition, and there's a photo of good old you. So I have that.
Yeah, I didn't recognise myself because I looked so young then.
Well, I recognised you, so there you go.
Yeah, so it was, and I mean, I had quite a lot of support from some of the Chinese people, as you know, because at that time I was very raw. And in that competition, I started to suss out what was going on, because when we was having a meeting and we got our list of competitors, the Chinese, when they were going out, they had little Chinese writing by different competitor names, And I of course, I didn't know anything about this because I didn't understand Chinese, and of course, you know, the translation in them days, they'd have somebody that was a professor in English but knew nothing about wushu. And the translation, they'd be talking in Chinese for half an hour, and I'd get about 3 minutes in English. So, but working, I started to suss out, and then when I was doing the scoring, I could see that sometimes why I was well out is because these names they've written down, these groups were giving them, special marks.
Of course, yeah.
And I remember after 91, Professor Lee was sitting in the audience, because at that time he fell out, he'd fallen out with the Chinese Wushu Association as well. But that's another. And he was sitting in the audience anyway. after the competition, we went out for dinner, and I said to Professor Lee, I said, "How do you think I done?" And he said, He said, "You done very well." He said, "Working with the Chinese judges you're working with." He said, "The only problem is you're too honest."
Yeah, it's something that I had a problem with too.
Yeah. So he said, and then after that, I mean, Malaysia was the next one, and you see, it was rampant there, and we had a massive team there. We had a really good team at that time. Then there was USA, and that's when Wu Bin took over. At our technical meetings with people doing optional routines, it was decided that a lot of the basics wasn't there, which we all been talking about. So that's when we Wu Bin and Mong Weifeng, he was there as well. The 8 professors from China, we set up that training manuals.
Yeah.
Where we done the stepping stone of all the routines.
Yeah.
So that was through Wu Bin and the technical meeting saying that we'd set up a training syllabus.
Yeah.
Say like in the Tai Chi, you've got the 8 posture, the 16 posture, the 24, the 32, 42. So you've got stepping stones, the same in Chang Chuan, Nan Chuan, and all the weapons. So we spent a lot of time on working on that, and we finished that in 87, I think. We finished, it actually got printed. I think it was 87. I got them here somewhere, but anyway.
Yeah, I've got them too.
And I mean, some of them routines are still used in the junior championship, or were used in the junior championship. So, it was to set the standard.
Well, it's also to maintain at least some decorum of basics, and
because
they've thrown all of that away. And I mean, you could even say that is the bare minimum that you should have. Even that was bare minimum, I would say. But they've thrown all of that away. Even for the kids, they've thrown a lot of it away. So I'm kind of like, what's the point of all of this, really? It's not even recognizable anymore.
That's as you know. And then, of course, in America, that's when we set up. That was the first set up of the technical committee.
Yeah,
officially. Officially. So there was myself, Xiao Yin, Pat Rice, the guy from Hong Kong, another guy from China. Anyway, that's when it was first set up. The main thing that we worked on was the standardised routines to build up the movements. And the thing about it is, like, from my training even at the Shanghai Sports University, all the old teachers were there, so therefore the coaches that were there had been trained by the old people.
The old generation, yeah.
The old generation, yeah. And so there was much training on that standard, and we felt that was lacking at the beginning. So that's why that was the beginning of the standardised routines. Now, I think the first standardised routine was good, and the second one was quite good, the standardised routines. But then the third one, from when this was in Wu Bin's area, then Huang Linghai took over. It was Huang Linghai?
Yeah, Huang Linghai.
Yeah, he took over from Wu Bin. Then he started to change. And then we started to get the inklings of movements changing.
And the degree of difficulties.
Then because they were trying to get into the Olympics. And, and then the story from then on. Then Wang Linghai, then Wang Yulong took over. And I thought he was quite a good chairman, actually.
He was. As you know, at the end of his time, he agreed that it had gone the wrong way, and he was letting us try to fix it, remember?
So, and, we started to go drastically the wrong way. And then Chen Yuhe took over, and
That was the end of that.
it was it was too late. It'd gone too far then, and even I got the feeling that he knew it was going the wrong way, but he couldn't do anything about it because it had already gone that way. And our argument. I know our argument is if we're going to put Nandu in, Nandu should be part of Wushu, not Wushu part of Nandu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because you're doing your routine, you stop, you do your difficult movement, then you carry on. I mean, what kind of Wushu is that?
Yeah, exactly. And also it was just the whole direction of the scoring. I mean, we don't have to get into all of that. But yeah, it was just a waste of time and just pushed everything in the wrong direction, and here we are today. So,
yeah, that's it. And we're both out of it now. I mean,
well,
I'll go back to the time of, my main aim, because I was in the building trade, I was a plastering contractor, my main aim was always to build my own house. Of course, I could never find a bit of land or to do it. Of course, in 89, I'd found an old farmhouse in Bletchley, which had a load of old outbuildings with it. So I bought that, and I built that up from nothing into my clinic. And, it was only going to be a martial arts studio.
Yeah.
But I had a good friend with me who was a Chinese doctor, and he said to me, "You won't make a living teaching Wushu." He said, "It's very difficult. Why don't you open a section of it as a clinic?"
Right.
And I thought about it, and it was I would never have survived without the clinic. And I mean, I built it up from nothing. Everything was falling down, and the old building was 400 years old. It was an old thatched farmhouse. So,
wow.
And everything connected it with it come under the National Trust. So you're only allowed to do exactly what, they allow you to do. But anyway, I built it up. So I had a training centre, I had 3 treatment rooms and a reception, and then the rest of it was our living quarters. But I mean, I had 8 practitioners working for us. I had 2 Chinese professors working there at different times, doing Chinese medicine and that kind of thing. I had Chinese coaches stay with me, which is the worst thing I ever done. And many of us over here had Chinese coaches come over, and they thought that the London or England was paved with gold. And I mean, the 2 I had with me, I had to get rid of them because they were trying. They was training my students, but at the same time trying to set up another class, taking my students to it.
Yeah, it's actually pretty common. It even happens here in other sports, like for example within jiu-jitsu. I know that a gym will employ a couple of coaches, and the one coach will be setting up a place down the road and try to siphon the students to go to his place down there, and then it happens all the time.
And of course, I had Li Dayin's daughter. She lived with me here when she come out. Fei Yip, or Fei Li, but I now have Fei Yip now. Yeah. And of course, that's a big organisation now up north with Tarry. Tarry was a Hong Kong restaurant guy, but he, the Bamboo Mantis, I think, it was his original style. But of course, he switched to Li Dayin, so he trains all Li Dayin stuff now. But I'm still in contact with them. They're too busy, doing their own thing and building their empire.
Yeah.
But so I with the British Kung Fu Council, I go back to the story. Master Huang was the treasurer, but in fact he didn't do anything. He passed it over to me. And,
okay.
For 10 years, I was the treasurer in the BCCMA. And then I changed. I went to vice chairman, and I was vice chairman. They wanted me over the last few years to be the chairman, but I've never wanted to be the chairman. Master Huang always trained me. He said, "Be number 2." He says, "Number 1 is the one that get the head cut off."
That's good advice, actually.
So I took his advice, and now I'm just honorary president now, but. I was a team leader, and You know, I go to I help them from time to time, but I try and keep out of the day-to-day running of it and all the politics that's involved with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had our fair share of politics, so...
Yeah. So I'm still involved with it's the BCCMA now, so it's the British Council for Chinese Martial Arts, and we've got another chairman in there now who's taking a different direction, and, you know, I mean... I try not to I don't get involved. I still keep in touch with people. Simon Watson, I don't know if you've heard of Simon. Simon is a great friend of mine, and I've been with his family, his father, and Simon for many years. In fact, Simon competed at 91. He was on the mat with Warr, you know.
Oh, wow. Tai Chi, doing Tai Chi against the...
Yeah. And him and Warr competed together.
That's amazing, yeah.
So Simon's a good lad, and he's, you know, I've put him in he's helping, we're working together, put it like that, and he's now head of Tai Chi in the BCCMA, so, and, you know, but we were working together on what we're doing. Simon's got some... You want younger people, you know, I'm an old man now and set in my ways. You want younger people with new ideas, you know, to come in and move it forward.
If you enjoy the Drunken Boxing Podcast, as well as all the other Mushin martial culture endeavors, please do support us if you can at patreon.com. We have 2 support tiers there that you can pledge to help us continue to do the work that we do and continue to bring you the podcast as well as all our other works. If you would like to make a once-off tip or donation to our endeavors, please visit the link listed in the show notes or scan the QR code here. Thank you to everyone who supports us.
But yeah, I mean, the IWF is, you know, well, what can we say?
Know. No need to say. I mean, I met you when I was just starting to get involved with trying to steer South Africa to get them
I remember that meeting. There was 2 of you, weren't there?
Yeah, I mean, that, like, South Africa, like, similar to what you were going through back in the day. I was doing Chinese martial arts down there. I'd done traditional systems and then started to see and get involved in a little bit of the modern stuff. I was young, energetic, and whatever, but there was no avenue in South Africa because there was no federation. So we started trying to get things, you know, to organize fully, and that's when I first met you when I came over. I first did my international judges exam in 2004. So yeah, that was also quite a while ago in today's terms. But I mean, you were at the first, and you were in the technical committee from its inception until I came in, and then we did a couple of terms together until, well, the poo-poo hit the fan and when we both left. But yeah, so we've known each other and gone through thick and thin over the years. And you've always been a man of integrity. So that's why I always got along with you, and that's why, you know, it was because of your integrity that you know, we both basically ended up leaving the organization. But, you know, to be honest, I must say, and I've said this to you privately before, that it was probably for the best, because I was so frustrated in there and upset, not just with how things were being run, but the direction of Chinese martial arts. And it felt like we were smashing our heads against a wall trying to fix it. And it's kind of wasted energy in the end. So...
Of course, I had the same problem with the EWF, you know, because I was a technical committee member of the EWF from its beginning. Yeah. And that was another minefield, as you may know. And so I was working in 2 technical committees. I was working, you know, in the EWF one, as it was in them days, and the IWF one. And that's where Yao Yin and Willie, you know, that's why the 3 of us become part of the IWF, because, you know, we were the EWF technical committee at that time.
Right. Yeah.
And we used to run all the competitions. You know, when I used to go to the EWF competitions, I used to have to do a judges course on my own and teach the 7 disciplines.
Wow.
Not teach them, but go through them. And then when we developed, when we was developing the program we was talking about, that's when we developed the Nandao and the Nangun and the Tai Chi Jian. Them 3 groups come in, so it was 10 disciplines.
Yeah.
So, as well as Sandar. So, you know, I didn't get involved with the Sandar. That was Willie's thing. But I mean, it was. I developed a book for the EWF and this kind of thing. But of course, I had a lot of problems with certain people that you already know about. You know. But I must admit, Ray Smith in them days supported me very well, though there was many people from certain areas of Europe that were trying to get me out all the time. I spent their whole life just focusing on trying to get rid of me. But, you know, I was like a thorn in their arse, really.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it was always good sitting and because you were one of the few people I could sit and talk to about traditional things, and particularly Xing Yi Quan, and that specific its practices, etc. When we were always working together, you had, I mean, you know what it was like. There were a lot of people that were in positions that had zero technical ability or knowledge, but you and I. And I think that was one of the first things that I think we really connected on when I first started being involved was talking about Xing Yi, you know, and even at that point you'd been involved for so long, but you still had such a passion when we would talk about Xing Yi Quan, which, you know, it was great. It was something that I always looked forward to. Apart from, you know, over the years we became very good friends and we could talk about anything, but that was the catalyst that I remember distinctly. And I know you still have a passion for Xing Yi Quan. So
I have a great passion. I have a great passion for Tai Chi, but
yes.
I've got my Xing Yi class every week, and I absolutely love it. You know, and when I practice, if I'm a bit down, like I was saying with the treatments I've had, down, you know, I just go out and do some Bom Chuan and Duan Chuan and Pao Chuan and Pi Chuan, and you know, it just sort of energizes me to get me and focuses my mind in the right place, and even talking now I'm getting excited about it, you know. I've got a great passion for wushu, and that's what's kept me going. And you know, I just, you know, I mean, the problem is you spend a lot of time focusing on it, and you sort of your family suffers, if you get what I mean. Because you've got a passion for one thing, and other things get put to one side. And you know, I look back now, and you know, my whole time, even when I was a plastering contractor, I'd come home, quick shower, and I'd be out teaching. That classes everywhere, and you know, unfortunately, your home life gets disrupted. And luckily enough, Lavinia was being brought up with martial arts, is that she understood it. But I mean, I've had many instructors, I've had many problems in their marriage, as I did have one time, because of wushu, and you know, the family and that sometimes becomes second.
You
know, it's got its good points, and you know, I suppose that's its down point. But you know, there are times when you can make it up.
You know, I wanted to ask you, and I mean, if you don't want to answer it, it's also okay. But after your breakup with Chisu, did you ever see him again? Or did you ever? I mean, when was?
No. The last time I saw him was I took the mother-in-law and my wife down to the funeral in Wales.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I never saw him again. Lavinia he met Lavinia. Lavinia met him sometime, and he turned his back on her, and that just done it for me and the family. If somebody can do that to their family, their child, I just can't I can't hold with that.
So
I mean,
Lavinia's obviously your ex-wife, his daughter.
Yes, yeah,
Ah,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, no,
yeah. And
that wouldn't sit well
that
with me.
broke her heart.
No.
That broke her heart, and well, I mean, to be honest, if somebody was said to me I would have been divorced, I would have never believed you. But things happen, and it happened. So that's another story. But it's I mean, because the Morningside was my building my house dream, if you like. So
Yeah.
I would have only left there in my box, but it had to go because that's what happened. But that's another story. But with Chisu, yeah, he completely changed from the person that I first met.
Yeah.
And one thing about Lavinia and my students today keep me grounded.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, I'm not famous or anything like that or got anything. I've only got a handful of students now, which is nice for me, though I teach a lot of people around the little classes I teach. Because I work a lot for the U3A groups, which are older retired groups, and I teach them a bit of Tai Chi, a little bit of Qigong, a little bit of Daoyin warm-up and that kind of thing, which keeps them going, and it keeps me going because they're social classes. You can have a bit of banter with them, and,
Of course.
and they get some exercise out of it. I get a little bit of payment, and, and everybody gets something from it, and it keeps me going. It makes me get up in the morning, have a shave and a shower, get out and get going.
Of course. Of course.
And I think,
that's one of the big values of Chinese martial arts that people don't realize, especially as you get older, is that it just keeps your mind and your body going. I mean, apart from all the other functions, that at a basic level is one of the key things. And the social aspect of it as well is also important. So
it is. And I mean, as you start to get older, the hardest thing to accept in yourself, and this must happen to every competitor and every athlete, is that things start to happen to your body and you can't do things that you used to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you start learning to accept that and having to deal with it just because you can't do it. And I think this is what happened to Chi Su, because as he got older, he couldn't do the things that he used to do. He stopped teaching them. And I think that's the worst thing you can do is, Master Huang always said to me, he said, the best thing a teacher can do is make sure your student is better than you.
Yeah, and that's something my teacher would say too. So there's something, similar between those two.
Because that's the way we go. Me and you, we sat down. There was another link between us as well, which is called beer.
Oh, yes. Of course. Never forget that.
We like to have a glass of beer occasionally, and we sit there and talk for hours and hours on end about whatever,
Exactly.
I mean, that's how a friendship builds, is, how stressed we used to get. People don't realise how many hours we used to have to put in working as a technical committee. You're there, you're there way before the competition. You're way there right through the competition, and you're still there way after the competition dealing with all the problems. Yeah. And people didn't realise the amount of hours that you put in to a competition. They see us sitting there thinking, oh, they ain't doing nothing, but they don't understand all the hard work goes into running that competition, because that's what we've done. And of course, when we finish that, we'd go off and have a beer somewhere and sit until the early hours of the morning talking about, all the things that you just mentioned, about and how we could put it right or try and put it right. But of course, a lot of people have said to me, even in BCCMA, oh, you didn't do, or in Europe, oh, you didn't do nothing for us. But they didn't realise is that, we would come to an agreement with the IWF. We sit there till 2 o'clock in the morning, come to an agreement. Then we come in the next morning and they'd say, oh, yes, they'd have their meeting and they'd say, this has been agreed and it's this and this. And you think, Well, that's not what we agreed.
Exactly.
Well, that's not what we agreed last night, because you don't realise, what people don't realise, you're not dealing with Wushu people, you're dealing with the party.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand. The top people that we deal with in Wushu are party people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was hard. I was surprised we got as much done as we did during our best times, you know. I mean, we really did do quite a bit, but you know.
What angst me is all the hard work you done in the translation, because before the translation was not good. In fact, it was crap.
So was non-existent.
You actually, because of your knowledge, not only in Wushu, but your knowledge in language, is that you could correct. I mean, a lot of the Chinese didn't like you because you could correct what they were saying for a simple reason. You knew the language very well, where many of the people, all the yes men, even if they knew it, wouldn't say anything, because most of them didn't know it anyway. And then all the work you put into the syllabus and the training and doing all the rules and everything, you know, and then for them to treat you the way that they did, I just couldn't accept that, you know. Yeah. And I mean, as a friend, you know, I just couldn't accept that, you know, because when I went back in Shanghai, a group of certain people took me for a drink and said, you know, if I do this, that and the other, I could stay and that kind of thing. And because Xiaoyin has passed away, Willie passed away, Ishihara passed away, you wasn't there, there was no reason for me. In Shanghai 2019, I spent the whole competition on my own. I was at the technical committee, but afterwards I used to go find a little bar and go for a drink and sit on my own. And, you know, I'm quite happy with that. I can have a decent conversation with myself then. And then I win the argument. But but the thing is that I thought my time had come to go. And, of course, I told these certain people that wanted me to kowtow down to a certain person. I said, no, I can't ever do that because what's been done is not correct.
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, you're a man of integrity, so that's what I've always known.
And, you know, I class you, when I talk about you, your name's mentioned because of all your work that you're doing. I say, well, I'm very lucky that Byron is a very good friend of mine and we work well together. And, you know, we come from the same apple, if you like. You know, we've got the same way of thinking. And that's why we got on so well, you know. And, well, I like to think we got on so well.
Yeah, we did. And it was, I'm lucky that we were friends. So, you know, it was one of the few things I used to look forward to when I used to go to an event, was that you were going to be there. So, yeah.
And it was my round.
And it was your round. Just one more. Just one more.
Just one more, yeah. There's some people in Europe still call me just one more.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to cover anything else or...
No, I think that was really good. I mean, we got to, you know, I wanted viewers, listeners rather, to hear about your experiences, to hear what you've gone through. You're a true pioneer in Chinese martial arts in general in England and in the West, but in the IWF and in the international thing, I mean, you predate all of that, and a lot of people don't know that. So, you know, it was one of the things that pissed me off so much when you did say you weren't going to, you know, kowtow to those people after I left. And you did that, you know, you did that in solidarity with me, and you left. It pissed me off the way that they gave you such an unceremonious exit after all your years of work. I mean, some of these people that are in there weren't even born when you were involved, and you know, it was absurd to me that had happened. But you know, I've always said one thing, like, you know, history is gonna remember the people that did that did the real work. They're not going to remember the yes men or at worst the people that were just dragging things down. And we've seen that since we've both left, that karma's making its way around. We're doing things that contribute to Chinese martial arts in general, specifically traditional Chinese martial arts. That's always been my goal, to push that forward, and it's having a better impact than what we had even thought it would if we were still trying to do things inside the organization. So karma works, and stay true, keep integrity, stay honest, stay focused on the truth and doing good things, and the results will speak for themselves. So yeah.
I'd just like to say I also got the same kind of treatment from the EWF by a certain person who wanted complete control. So the EWF treated me exactly the same way as well.
Yeah.
There you go. That's what.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. Anyway, take care. Give my regards to your wife.
I will do.
Do you want a little? Do you want to switch off and have another little chat, or?
Yeah, sure. Let's end this. So I'll say goodbye to you on behalf of all the listeners, and we'll chat soon.